The music faded and the lights dimmed just enough for the screen to glow behind the head table. Conversations hushed as the slideshow began grainy snapshots of childhood, two boys side by side with matching bowl cuts and scraped knees. Me and Elias. Christmas mornings in flannel pajamas, soccer trophies held high, awkward teenage grins. Guests chuckled softly at the nostalgia, raising glasses toward us in fond recognition. I sat at the edge of the table, half watching, half hoping the whole thing would pass quietly. I hadn't asked for a slideshow. Marjorie said Elias had insisted, said it was tradition. I should have known better. The next slide blinked onto the screen like a slap. Black background, white block letters, stark, deliberate, infertile, divorced failure, no future. Laughter cracked across the room before anyone could process what they were laughing at. Not all at once, but in pockets confused chuckles that grew louder with every second the words hung in the air. Someone gasped, then giggled. Another clinked a glass. My uncle barked out a laugh from the corner near the open bar. I didn't move. Elias stood across from me, grinning like he'd won something. He raised his glass toward the screen, then gave a slight theatrical shrug. "Don't laugh too hard," he said to no one and everyone. He might cry. Carol, my mother, sipped her wine without blinking. Henry, my father, chuckled and leaned over to someone I couldn't see. "Just a joke, right?" he murmured. I hadn't seen the file before. I hadn't needed to. That smug little font, the tight spacing, the punchline in all caps. It was his work. He'd always been good with words, just crueler than most. They thought I'd break, that I'd sit there, red-faced, humiliated, maybe storm off or laugh it off like a good sport. But I'd spent years learning how to hold still when it hurt. So I stood, not fast, not angry, just enough for the room to notice. I looked toward the screen, then out at the faces watching me like I was about to deliver a punchline of my own. I cleared my throat, quiet but steady. "Before you laugh too hard," I said, "check the name at the bottom." And then I sat back down. We were born 3 minutes apart on a stormy October night just outside Boulder. I came first, but Elias cried louder. That was always the joke he made, the noise I made the space. Growing up, we were close in the way that twins often are, inseparable but uneven. Elias was the dreamer, all confidence and sparkle. I was the one who fixed broken things, bike chains, remote controls, test grades. He got away with skipping algebra tests because I slid him the answers. I took detention when he snuck out past curfew and got caught. We even switched clothes once, so he could go on a date without his girlfriend seeing the bruise from his latest soccer match. Our parents used to say we were two sides of the same coin, but they spent most of their time polishing his. He was charming in a way that made adults lean in. I was quiet in a way that made them forget I was still in the room. When we were teenagers, the differences sharpened. Elias made big promises, doctor, philanthropist, family man. I stuck to smaller goals. I liked building things. I liked earning things. I thought that would be enough. The first real shift came after high school. Elias was set on med school, but scholarships only covered part of it. I picked up night shifts at a warehouse to help cover the rest, told him not to worry that I'd get by. I was 19 when I sold my rebuilt '84 Harley so he could buy a new laptop for his MCAT prep. He cried when I handed him the money, said he'd pay me back. He never did, but that wasn't the point. Then Dad lost his job. Mom, already brittle, started drinking in the mornings. I came home one day to find her asleep on the laundry room floor with the dryer door open and clothes still wet inside. Elias said he couldn't help. He had rotations boards, late-night shifts. He had a future to protect. So I stayed, took care of the mortgage, cooked their meals, paid down the credit cards. When she forgot which twin I was, I told myself it didn't matter. I was still their son, still family. Elias sent holiday cards. I handled the power bill. He called once every few weeks. I was the one picking up their prescriptions. He was the golden boy. I was just the shadow that made his shine look brighter. Still, I didn't stop loving him. Not then. I kept the house running long after it should have fallen apart. When Carol stopped recognizing overdue bills and Henry forgot how many drinks he'd had before noon, I stepped in. I took over the bank accounts, consolidated the debt, canceled their cable, and started cooking meals that didn't come out of a box or bottle. No one thanked me. No one noticed, really. The lights stayed on, so I must have been doing fine. Somewhere in the middle of that slow unraveling, I met Maya. She was a nurse at the urgent care clinic where I brought Dad after a fall. She was the kind of woman who laughed with her whole face and had a voice like late-night radio. We talked in the parking lot while he sat in the car, dozing. A week later, I asked her to dinner. She said yes without hesitation, and for a little while, I remembered what it felt like to be seen. We married 2 years later. It was quiet courthouse, 2 friends, simple vows. We moved into a rental on the edge of Boulder just far enough to breathe. I wanted kids. She did too. We tried for almost a year. Then came the test results. It was me. I remember holding the paper in my hands like it might change if I stared hard enough. Maya said it didn't matter that we were still a family. She kissed my temple and told me not to carry it like a curse. A year later, I came home early and found her in the bedroom folding her clothes into a suitcase. She didn't cry. She just said she was tired of being tired, that she wanted a life that didn't smell like fatigue, a man who didn't make coffee with silence. I didn't beg. I helped her zip the suitcase and carry it to her car. She kissed my cheek before driving off. I stood in the driveway for a long time after her tail lights vanished. That was when Elias stopped picking up my calls. At first I told myself he was just busy. Hospital shifts, paperwork exhaustion, I knew the rhythm. I knew what it meant to be pulled thin. So I let it slide. One missed call, then another. A week, a month. His voice faded out of my phone and then my life. But I still sent him birthday messages, still mailed gifts at Christmas. Still answered when our parents said his name like it was the only one that mattered. Because back then, I still believed being the quiet one made me good. It started small, like most things that rot from the inside. One Sunday I brought groceries to the house, eggs, bread. The soup Mom liked, even though she always said she hated how it tasted when she was sober. I was unpacking bags in the kitchen when I heard her on the phone, her voice low and oddly cheerful. "Oh, Elias is doing so well. Our only child really made something of himself." I paused mid-reach, a can of beans in my hand. I waited for the correction, the laugh, the, "You know what I mean." It never came. I wanted to believe it was just a slip, that she was tired, that her memory was fraying in places I couldn't see. But it happened again and again, until the only thing that seemed accidental was my presence. A month later, I stopped by the auto shop I'd worked at since I was 23. Henry was there waiting for a tire rotation. I didn't even know he still used the place. He didn't see me right away. I walked into the break room to grab my gloves and heard his voice from the front, clear as anything. "Yeah, Julian works here. The garage job." He laughed sharp and mean, still covered in grease at 33. "But hey, he shows up." That laugh stuck with me longer than it should have. I didn't say anything, didn't step out. I waited until he left, then went back to work like nothing had cracked. The final shift came at Thanksgiving. No call, no message. I only found out when I stopped by with a pie I'd baked from scratch. The lights were on. Cars lined the driveway. I knocked. No one answered. Through the kitchen window I saw them all, Elias at the head of the table, Mom refilling glasses, Dad mid-joke. They didn't even glance toward the door. I set the pie on the porch and left. Weeks passed. Then one day, a letter arrived, heavy envelope, elegant handwriting. A wedding invitation. Elias and Marjorie. The date set for early summer. The location a lodge outside Boulder. My name written neatly in the corner. Inside a note in different handwriting, softer, I asked him to invite you. I hope you'll come. You matter. Marjorie. It was the first time in years someone in that family told me I mattered, and it wasn't even one of my own. The email came late at night, buried under a chain of logistics. The venue had sent out a shared folder with final materials, guest lists, menu updates, music cues. I clicked the link without much thought. I wasn't expecting anything unusual. I'd already accepted that I was attending out of obligation, not celebration. Then I saw it. A PowerPoint file titled Our Story. I almost didn't open it, but curiosity has its own weight. Slide after slide of the expected baby photos matching Halloween costumes, our 8th grade science fair project with the lopsided volcano. I even let myself smile once. Then I reached the second-to-last slide. Black background, white text, infertile, divorced failure, no future. There was no doubt in my mind who wrote it. Elias had a particular style, clean, theatrical, surgical in its cruelty. His favorite font, the spacing, the rhythm of the words. It read like something he thought was clever enough to get laughs without consequences. He hadn't even tried to hide it. That was the part that stayed with me longer than the words themselves. I didn't delete the slide. I duplicated the file quietly and made a single change. One slide out. One slide in. A week earlier, I'd received a call from someone I hadn't spoken to before. Her voice shook when she said her name. She was a nurse who used to work under Elias, said she'd heard through a friend that I was his brother, that I might listen. I did. She told me about the harassment, the subtle ways he cornered her, the comments no one believed, the way it eroded her work life until she had no choice but to quit. I paid her consultation fee and connected her with a lawyer I knew, someone honest. A few weeks later, 2 more women came forward. One had texts. One had kept a written log. They didn't know each other, but their stories overlapped like pages in the same book. No press, no statements, just clean documentation. Quiet truth. The hospital board began an internal review. Nothing had been released yet. Elias didn't know. He was still grinning in group chats, sending wine pairings to the wedding caterer, polishing his public image. He was planning a joke at my expense, certain I'd do what I always did, stay quiet, take it, let the moment pass. But I'd learned something in the silence of being overlooked. Sometimes the only way to stop a storm is to open the window and let it in. He thought he was setting the stage for a laugh. I was setting the stage for the truth. The laughter was still hanging in the air when the screen stuttered. The image flickered, glitched, then went black. I heard a few murmurs, some confused chuckles, the clink of glass against glass. Someone muttered something about the projector overheating. Then, without warning, a new slide came on. This time, no photos, no childhood nostalgia, no punchlines, just a gray background and white letters. This man is under investigation, pending suspension, allegations of misconduct. Details confidential for now. The room snapped into silence. Real silence. Not the kind that waits for a joke to land, the kind that feels like air being sucked out of a room. Below the message was a single name. Elias Royce. I didn't speak. I didn't move. I just watched the expressions shift across the crowd, confusion, then disbelief, then something else. Recognition. Fear. The silence stretched so long it became a kind of noise. Elias stood frozen beside Marjorie, his wine glass suspended mid-air. He squinted at the screen like it might suddenly change, like maybe this was still his show. "What is this?" he asked, his voice brittle. Nobody answered. He turned toward me, his face pulled tight, caught between panic and disbelief. "This isn't funny," he snapped. What kind of sick joke? I didn't flinch. I didn't even look at him for long, just enough to let him know I had heard him and had no plans to explain myself. I reached into my jacket pocket, took out my phone, tapped once to disconnect the feed, and slipped it back in. That was it. No speech, no accusations, no fireworks, just truth. The kind that didn't need volume. From behind me I heard a gasp. Then Marjorie's voice, low and shaken. "Elias." He opened his mouth, then closed it. For a second he looked like a child caught lying unsure which version of the story to try first. Then the screen went black again. Someone must have cut the projector feed. The silence didn't go with it. I turned and walked toward the door. No rush, no drama. I passed people I knew, people who used to slap my back at holidays, people who now stared like they didn't recognize me without my usual silence. I didn't care. I opened the door and stepped into the early evening air. The wind was cooler now, like the mountains themselves had held their breath. I didn't need to stay for dessert. I didn't need to watch him spin another story or hear the excuses build like scaffolding around his lies. He made a stage out of my pain. I gave him one of his own. 2 days after the wedding, my phone rang just past noon. I was in the garage, hands deep in a carburetor, trying to remember if I'd eaten breakfast. The name on the screen stopped me cold. Carol. I let it ring twice, then answered. Her voice came through tight and breathless, like she'd been holding it in since Saturday night. "Why would you do that to your brother?" she said. No greeting, no pause on his special day. I didn't reply. There was nothing she'd understand in anything I could say. She waited. When I didn't respond, she exhaled sharply, like I'd just proved her right about something. "You've always been jealous of him," she muttered. "You didn't have to ruin it." I held the phone away from my ear for a moment, stared at the smudges on my fingers. Then I hung up. No words, just silence, clean and complete. Later that evening, a text came through from Henry. "You embarrassed the family?" That was all it said. No punctuation, no explanation. I stared at it for a long time, like it might morph into something human if I gave it time. Then I blocked the number. I'd spent most of my life learning how to hold space for people who wouldn't do the same for me. I figured I could survive without their voices just fine. Marjorie's message came the next morning. "I didn't know. Thank you." Simple. No apology, no follow-up, just acknowledgement. It was the only thing I didn't delete. The house was quiet. I hadn't turned on music in days. There was something sacred about the stillness now, something earned. I drank coffee slowly, without needing to rush to be anywhere I wasn't wanted. The world had shrunk, but not in a way that felt small. I looked around at the space I'd built, a cluttered garage, mismatched furniture shelves filled with half-fixed things. No portrait-perfect family, no degrees hanging on the wall, no wedding photos. But it was mine. All of it. Every cracked tile and uneven drawer, built by hands that had never asked for anything but time and enough peace to keep going. The calls stopped after that. The messages, too. Not because they forgave me, because they finally saw that I didn't need to be part of their picture anymore. His face is mine, but his choices never were. That truth used to haunt me. I'd look in the mirror and see the same jawline, same eyes, same crooked brow. I used to think maybe if I'd been louder, flashier, more like him, they would have seen me too. But I've come to understand that people see what they want to see, and sometimes they only look at the light because it makes it easier to ignore what stands in the shadow. I don't have a wife, I don't have children, I never finished school, but I sleep through the night. My hands are steady. My mind doesn't run in circles. I wake up without flinching at what the day might bring. That counts for something. Peace isn't loud. It doesn't throw parades or send out announcements. It's a quiet room, a meal you made yourself, a name you no longer need to defend. I don't know what happened with Elias after that night. I didn't ask. I didn't search for headlines or listen for fallout. If the board followed through, if Marjorie stayed, if the lies unraveled behind closed doors, none of it belongs to me anymore. He built a house out of illusions. If it burns without my hands on the match. Tonight I ate dinner alone. A simple plate, roasted chicken, carrots, a slice of bread. I cleaned the kitchen. I sat outside on the back step with a blanket over my shoulders, watching the wind move through the trees like it had somewhere to be. Far off in the hills, I saw a flicker of orange against the deep blue. Probably a bonfire or someone burning brush, but for a second it felt like something ending. Not in anger, not in ruin, just done. I didn't need revenge. I didn't need applause. I only needed to let go of the weight I'd carried for too long, the kind that hides in your spine and makes you forget how tall you really are. Let them laugh. Let them whisper. Let them go silent. They'll never understand the strength it takes to be the man they couldn't destroy, and now they never will. What if survival doesn't look like winning but walking away untouched?